I really just don't think that this person is suitable to be in my life right now. And eventually I just broke up with them. I would just hear people screaming outside. I would hear police almost every night. But while I was at IKEA, I got a phone call from Dreamworks and I was like, oh my gosh. And I like ran outside of the store and I was like, hello bitches, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to finally finish the last leg of my whole CalArts journey, which I will link down below if you want to see parts 1 and 2. But last time we left off in my second year, kind of going on into my third year. And even though I went to school technically for 4 years, I'm just gonna break down this video into 3 parts just because I feel like my third year was kind of an in-between of my second and fourth year, and there's really not too much to talk about artistic journey-wise, although there were some huge life events that happened in my third year. So I will briefly talk about my third year here. However, I feel like my fourth year is kind of when things start to get a little bit juicy again and might have more content that other art students might relate to, especially the whole graduation and finding a job part. So stick around to this video if you want to hear more about my existential crisis. So where we last left off with my second year was, it was pretty much a year of burnout, honestly, and just workaholism, and pretty much how students always glorified this idea of overworking. So that's kind of what I did throughout my third year. Was I started to really work on myself as a person in terms of just my fitness, relationship wise, and just focusing on my own personal hobbies again. I actually started to draw personally for myself again this year. If you ever saw my Inktober sketchbook walkthrough in 2016 or so, believe it or not, that was the first time I probably started drawing in a sketchbook just purely for myself and not for the reasonings of like, this is for school. So for my third year film, you all probably know about it already, but it's about a young teenage girl who's currently going through a rough patch with her mother, and she kind of goes out and runs off somewhere, and then her pet Gourami, which was inspired by my old pet Gourami, kind of acts like her fairy godfather and tells her all the things that her mother has done for her and why she should learn to appreciate her. And that was honestly a story that was very personal to me, because I felt like growing up, my relationship with my parents were always kind of rocky a bit. We had a lot of emotional roller coasters, ups and downs, and I feel like over time as an adult, you eventually just learn that your parents just kind of did the best that they could do for you during their time period as parents, and that was just what the story was about. So during this time in my life when I was finally starting to get my shit together, I was not just benefiting my own personal life, but I felt like I was starting to realize my worth as a person too. And it gave me more confidence in who I am and who I should hang around with. So I feel like throughout school, I was pretty much keeping in touch with all of my friends back on the East Coast. And there was this one friend that I was still keeping in touch with who during this time started to become more of a struggle to maintain a friendship with. And I really tried my best to just hold on to this friendship throughout the years. I really did my best as a friend to keep it a two-way street, but at some point it just felt like me as a person always giving and giving and giving and giving. And after I gained more clarification in all of these other areas of my life, it made me see clearer with this one relationship or friendship I had that was starting to become a little bit toxic. And I feel like the word toxic can be a little bit harsh sometimes, because let's be real, we're all imperfect. We all go through a rough patch in life. I just got out of one myself in this story, but I felt like there was a time where our relationship was starting to become toxic to my life. It wasn't the person who was toxic, it was just the situation, because I feel like this person was also going through their own personal struggles and hurdles, and I don't think that that should be held against them and be like, you're a toxic person, because let's be real, we're all human, we're all gonna be going through lows that are gonna make us not make the best decisions in life, and that was just currently what this friend I had was going through. However, I felt like at this time we just were not meant to really be together or fit together, because I just could not go back to a place that I was previously, where I spend the rest of my life in California miserable just over a friendship. Their insecurities were starting to really affect my relationship with art, and I just really did not want that to be a thing anymore, because this friend I had always equated to how well a drawing was done to a person's worth, but it's also hard to really change a person when you're not them. So this person I felt like was not in the situation to really be changing, and as of what I saw the last time, they just looked like they were going to stay that way for a while. And in addition to that, I noticed that their low self-esteem was making them very impressionable to trying different substances or entering the world of alcohol. However, I know that this person was not doing it for the right reasons and kind of was more doing it for peer pressure and just because there was nothing else better going on in their life. So for me, it just was not a good time to have this person in my life, and it was very hard for me to really finally learn to let go of them. I even cried to my other friends. Like, I remember just having a Skype call again with my friends, bawling my eyes out because I really was going to miss having this person in my life, and I really held on to the memories and the history together. But I just felt like, one, this friendship is no longer a friendship. It's just me constantly giving and offering things only for me to feel like I'm being ignored or neglected. And the only times that I ever do talk to them, it's like, oh, about how your artwork reflects on your personal worth as a human being, if it's not good enough. Or if we did talk together, they would just be talking about their experiences with alcohol and drugs. And that just was not something I wished to engage in the times that I was starting to finally get my life back together. I just did not have the capacity to enter that world at this time in my life. So I was just like, I really just don't think that this person is suitable to be in my life right now. And eventually I just broke up with them friendship wise. I remember the next day too, I had a class for illustration class where we were just sitting in class and drawing films and drawing studies of a film, but in our own styles with charcoal. And I just specifically remember how bad this day was. I felt so sick. I had a headache. My whole face was sore and I just could not get through the day. And I even had a project where I had to interview my teacher afterwards, which honestly was a great interview and it really, helped distract me from the pain of the whole breakup. However, it just also was a very memorable day throughout my whole time in art school. Was just a day full of emotional heartbreak. I even lost my headphones, and something as small and simple as that was enough to really just throw me off the edge. That was just a really bad day in my memory. I even made a whole playlist to get through the day. So that was just a very randomly iconic day in my art school years. So as time went on, I was starting to refocus back on, my film, my school, my artwork, my own personal life and fitness, health, shit, whatever. And in addition to that, I decided to finally enter the world of dating. So one of the great things about finally balancing your life together is I feel like there was finally a time slot that I could make time for somebody else as well and just see where it goes. This was closer to when I was closer to being done with my film. I was like, hey, I can finally go out on a date with someone. And for some reason, I just remembered this being such a memorable day in my life as well. Very contrastingly different from when I just broke up with the ex-friend that I had. And this was the first time I remembered feeling alive throughout my whole art school years, because even though I started making great friends in art school, we were all kind of on a similar boat of being stuck on this campus in CalArts. Because if any of you are not aware, CalArts is kind of located in Valencia in a suburban neighborhood where there's really nothing else to do around that area other than just going to the school or going to the grocery store or the nearby mall. Otherwise you have to drive 45 minutes down to LA, and that's the only way that you can really get access to a main big city. So being stuck in Valencia, and specifically just on the CalArts campus, was just all we ever really knew throughout our times staying at CalArts. So this one moment that I finally was able to just have a reason to dress up extra nice and just go out and meet somebody new was just a very exciting night for me. And honestly, even though this part just really has nothing to do with my art journey in general, it definitely was one of the memories that made my art school experience so much more happier and memorable, because I didn't even know I was about to meet the love of my life at some random restaurant at some random time. I was just ready for this to be casual and just be okay, bye. But here we are, still together 5 years later. And the rest of my third year I felt went pretty well. Until I got to the job and internship part, which was the next existential crisis that I was about to enter in my life. So after I was done with my third year, I was like, I really have to look for an internship to help me with my career. And I really tried my best to apply to every single thing I could possibly see online. Like my first time, I kind of just got the cartoon. Yes? Is there something you would like to say to everyone, Mrs. Pie? Thank you for sharing that with us. So I was about to enter the next existential crisis of my life, which was the whole world of job hunts. I would say that this was still very the early beginnings because I still had the remainder of my fourth year to really deal with that. So during the beginning of my third year, I really struggled to find any internships. I applied to anything and everything possible and faced many rejections. Like I applied to so many to the point that I was starting to even apply to these really unknown studios or production companies that just made visual effects for live action film. Like I got to the point where I was starting to apply for things that weren't even up my alley. Eventually, I just landed on one that was offering me a freelance opportunity, and it was not even an animation job. It was just this really random production company that just did animations or graphics for various other studios, events. Like I did the most random things at this internship, and it was also one of the most scary experiences I think I've had in my whole residence of living in California. So I really did not know how LA's neighborhoods worked yet, and this internship was really located closer to Hollywood, between Hollywood and downtown LA. And for some of you, you might know that those aren't really the best neighborhoods for some areas, not all of them. But I rented out this Airbnb because I had nowhere else to live, and this was the closest Airbnb to this production company that I got freelance for. And when I applied to this Airbnb, I went in and realized that this building was probably an old hospital or nursing home that they converted to an Airbnb now, and you could still smell like the remnants of like the old hospital, just that hand sanitizer smell. And it was just very triggering for me because it really reminds me of the days like I visited my grandparents all the times in nursing homes, and it just really gets me randomly emotional. So I really just did not like the vibe of being in this place. And when I went to go check in with the landlord or whatever, I was with my parents. But when I was like knocking on the door of the landlord that they said to go talk to when you first check in, the first thing I heard in the background was just yelling. Like this guy was just like,
"Hey Jim, where's my money? You promised me you would give me all this money. Where is it? Tell me before I come over and fuck you up."
And I was just like standing out there with my parents like, what the hell is happening? Like this person clearly is not okay. So finally he opened the door, and this guy just really seemed like not put together at all. It kind of just looked like he woke up or something like that, and he almost reeked of alcohol. Like my dad even said himself, like that guy smelled like alcohol. So this guy who just really seemed sketchy just was like,
"Oh, I'm so sorry for like what you had to see back there. Like, come, I'll show you your Airbnb."
So then he walks me down to my Airbnb, which honestly was not the best looking place ever, but it was kind of a place I just resorted to because there was nowhere else that I could afford to live in this area of LA. So when I was dropped off at my Airbnb, my parents and I, of course, were feeling a little bit uneasy about it. I was feeling uneasy about it, and we were cleaning the whole Airbnb because it just felt so dirty and not clean or hygienic. We just sanitized everything down. We were wiping everything, and we were just trying to make sure this place felt as cozy as possible because I just did not feel safe there as a young woman living there by herself. I was not even living with my boyfriend. So when my parents finally left me, it was just very difficult for them because they also were uncomfortable leaving me in this place that just did not look like the best ideal location for a single young woman to be living by herself, because literally at night, I shit you not, I would just hear people screaming outside. I would hear police almost every night. I honestly felt a little bit frightened for my life, and even one of the nights when I was just sleeping, like the landlord that was upstairs that I was intimidated by just came randomly and started knocking on my door randomly in the middle of the night while I was sleeping, and he was just asking me if everything was okay and if I'm getting the hang of everything, and like that's fine and great, but also why are you doing this at like 1 a.m. when I'm like sleeping? So I just did not even open the door. I did not go out. I just like yelled from my bed and I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And that was that. So I continued working at this freelance place, which honestly, I did not love it. It was okay, but I did not love it. And every time I worked there, I was hopping onto a different project. I was moving to a different space, a different location every other week. Honestly, to be honest, I felt like a cog in the machine. So I just really felt like these people just honestly just wanted to use me as just like cheap work or something like that, just because I was a student. So that's just what I went there to do every day. I just did these random things for video games, random things for films, or random things for like San Diego Comic-Con, and it was just very unfocused. And finally, during one of the days of my freelance, I got an email from Disney Animation, and they were just like, hey Michelle, sorry, but we had to reject you from the story internship just because like my work was too clean looking and it was too polished, and Disney usually prefers to see like rougher work when it comes to your internships. But they were like, however, there is a 2D animation internship we have available, and we were wondering if you would like to take on this opportunity. And I was just like,
hell yeah, please just fucking get me out of this hellhole.
So I gladly accepted this internship, and I told my parents everything, and I was so happy because this meant I could finally move out of this random Airbnb apartment in the middle of Hollywood and finally go somewhere, probably back in Burbank. So I had a great time at my Disney internship. I learned a lot. I made so many friends, and I felt like this was one of the best internship experiences I've ever had in my life. And not just for the opportunity reasons and not just for the job reasons, but just coming from a place where I felt like I was just treated like complete shit. It was just so nice to be welcomed by the arms of like people who were mentoring you and people who were your friends and your interns who are now people that you can be lifelong buddies with. That was just super nice compared to just coming from a place where I felt like people were just using me to just create art and just be like, bye bitch, and just like dump me out on the streets or whatever. So finally, after the whole summer of the third year was over, I came back to CalArts again for my fourth year. And during my fourth year at CalArts, I actually got an internship with Dreamworks during the beginnings of my time there. And I was able to just basically go to the internship 2 to 3 days of the week while going to classes the remainder of the other days, because your internship can help fulfill like class credits or something like that. You just had to make sure this application form was filled out. So that's what I did. However, this internship was not necessarily for story. Story was what I realized eventually I wanted to get into. Throughout the whole process of filmmaking, I always felt like I resonated with story more because, you know, I like creating narrative art. I like making sequential art. I liked making comics. I liked keeping my drawings not exactly the most perfect and polished, and storyboarding fit the lines of that. However, I felt like anytime I applied to a story internship, I was still getting rejected, mainly due to the fact that I still kept my drawings too tight, too clean, too illustrative, and it was very difficult for me to break out of that habit. As someone who has struggled with self-esteem and artwork, the last thing I wanted to do was put out an ugly piece of a rough drawing in front of someone and fear it get rejected. So it was very hard for me to go back to that rough art phase. But I was still very thankful regardless to get this internship with Dreamworks, even though it was more of a character art internship. And character art was pretty much just kind of like creating artwork for more of the marketing aspects for films that already exist for Dreamworks. It's not like I was working on a film, it was more like I was helping create artwork for supplemental marketing aspects of a film. So regardless, I still really enjoyed this internship too, because I still made friends and relationships from this internship. Unlike like my previous job at that random freelancing place, it kind of doesn't even matter what you do anymore because it's really the people that make it matter. And that's something you learn after your internships. Like, you might still be thinking like, oh, I don't care. I just want to work for like Pixar or Disney someday. I don't care about the people, blah, blah, blah. I just want to get a good job at a good, notable studio. And that's what you think. But once you work at the place and realize that if the people are not your type of people, or the people don't really value you as a person, I really don't think you're going to be happy there. But that's just my personal experience, and it might not be the same for you, because Some people are just okay with just going to work and do the work and not care about the relationship aspect. But I felt like for me, it was important to build a community for someone that just moved to this state and is still very new to this industry in general. So I really appreciated making the friends that I did at both my Disney and Dreamworks internships. So like last year, I did the same thing with my film. I prepared it a lot earlier during the summer of my third year, and I pretty much finished it just as early as I did with my third year film. So my fourth year film was basically about a sister and a brother getting lost in a big, wide open world and learning to get over fear and take risks in life, because you never know who could be out there to help you, something like that. Other than that, it was a very fun film that I made. Honestly, I really don't have much of a strong opinion about my student films anymore. Like, I kind of just see them as learning curves of the past. I just kind of wanted to do something that would satisfy my interests, my hobbies, or just things that I really liked. And I really always liked these alien worlds with strange rock formations, which probably explains my fascination with the West Coast and all of their national parks. And I felt like that was, again, the life that I wanted to live. I wanted to live a life where I went out into this big, wide open world with people and explored these big, weird, fantastical universes. So during the end of my fourth year was really when the existential crisis was coming back and hitting me, because technically I would say that I've been applying for jobs for pretty much a whole year, because by the time I graduated there was kind of 3 months of me just doing nothing and looking for a job and not really landing anything. But there were also many months prior to graduation where I was applying to jobs and still not getting anything. So I felt like for about a whole year I was applying to stuff and getting absolutely nothing. So after graduation, I moved into my very first apartment ever, which was really exciting. However, I was still moving into it unemployed. And one of the jobs that I actually applied to was the Dreamworks internship that I was working for. When I applied for the full-time job position, like, they gave me so much confidence and they were just like,
Yeah, don't worry about it. Like, you're good. You were like the best intern we ever had. You got this.
But of course, like, people just like saying those things, and I don't trust people now when they say that anymore, because I ended up not getting the full-time position. And I will never forget the way that turned out. Was I was just so happily at IKEA with my parents, just looking for furniture for my apartment and furnishing it up, and I was just like, wow, I have so many applications that I'm hearing back from. I can't wait to like hear who's gonna say yes, and hopefully not anyone who's gonna say no. But while I was at IKEA, I got a phone call from Dreamworks and I was like, oh my gosh. And I like ran outside of the store and I was like, hello? And they basically told me that they could not proceed with the internship because they wanted to find someone who was more experienced, had more years of experience. And I was just, of course, heartbroken, because I don't think it was the fact that I lost this internship specifically, but I think it was more of that I had really high hopes just because I was given the expectations that this was going to work out. I think if anything, this rejection was more of a blessing from them, in the sense that they probably knew, hey, Michelle's not going to be doing this for the rest of her life. We know she wants to do story. We know she wants to do these other things in animation. So I feel like she is more likely to land a job that is closer to what she wants instead of this job. That is my guess on why they probably rejected me, as well as the fact that I'm probably not as experienced working full-time in animation yet. So after this whole rejection, I just pretty much sat in my apartment pretty much every day, reworking my portfolio, ripping my old portfolio apart and creating a new one. And this was also when I started to make my comics on Instagram, because I really felt hopeless. I was like, there's really nothing else going for me, so I might as well just post comics online to just show people that I exist. So while I was doing that, let me just tell you, I faced probably 10 different rejections from 10 different places who all gave me the same amount of false hope. And I kind of just wished that studios could be better about being transparent about things, or even telling you whether or not if you got the job or not, because half of the jobs I applied for, I felt like I was just left hanging without any clarification. And things like that I felt like were always left unanswered. And if I had to give the animation industry some advice, it would be give some closure to your applicants, because It's just creating this endless cycle of insecurities and uncertainty for people who actually genuinely want to work hard and be a part of this community. So that's just a flaw of the industry, but also what industry doesn't do that? I feel like everywhere does that. For the remainder of the whole summer, after my 4th year, I pretty much had no job. And it wasn't until the end of that summer where I finally got the opportunity to take a test for a revisionist position on Trash Truck. And that was the job that I ultimately got at the end of the day. And I'm super thankful for that opportunity because without that, I would not be where I am today. So I will say though, before I got my last job, I need to describe how I was really at my wit's end with this whole job journey, because it really starts to feel hopeless at some point, because when you only are told no or given no answers, like what else are you supposed to believe? Because nothing at this rate is really giving you a sign. But I will just say to just not give up no matter how long it takes, because you will get something. It's just a matter of time, and how much time that takes is really uncertain. And honestly, that's just kind of what sucks about working in a very project-based industry. But just remember that it's not always about you as a person, because I felt like I started to tie my self-worth with my job acceptances, but it's not always about that. Sometimes it's just about they want to recycle people that are already working in their company. And I mean, if I was working at a studio, I feel like I would like to have that right as well, to be considered for another project after working for them for so long. And there are just other things, like maybe they can't afford you right now. There's so many other reasons that are not about you, and it took me a while to really realize that too. So that was just kind of the whole job struggle. The whole job hunt struggle is going to be a big thing after graduation, but there are also some people who are lucky enough to get hired while they're finishing their 4th year of school. I know plenty of friends and people who got hired while they were still in school and just left school and were like, bye bitches. But just remember that everybody is on a different timeline. Things will work out differently for different people, and don't take things too much to heart. Overall, that was pretty much my CalArts journey, and the way that it all started is just so drastically different from the way that it ended. I will say I really ended my time at CalArts so much happier as a person, because I felt like I learned to balance my life and find my worth as a person and not just as an artist. And I really found so many new relationships. I would say that insecurities honestly never go away. Like, they will always exist in your life, and I felt like I benefited more from just embracing that than just fighting it off and saying I wish to be in a place where I will never be insecure again. Like, that's not gonna happen. You're always gonna have some level of insecurity with something in life, and it's better to just accept that and realize that even though it exists, there are ways to just lessen it over time and have a healthier relationship with it and just be honest with it, honestly. Like, I feel like talking about my insecurities and sharing it through my comics strangely brought more people together and built more of a community between people, and really helped me practice vulnerability, which is very important in storytelling. The things that do make the journey bearable are like the things that I mentioned, was making friendships, forming relationships, and learning to just live your life beyond just the art stuff, because I feel like when you focus yourself so much in only one topic, but not try to broaden out in other areas, it's like when you look back in your life, you're only ever gonna see work and art only. And those are the types of memories that are quite enjoyable for me to look back at, but again, to each their own. And maybe for you, if you just like looking at your art journey only in your past, then great, that's perfect for you. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this whole 3-part process of hearing about my journey throughout art school. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one. So peace out and stay wholesome, bitches.